listener production.
Thursday, the 2nd of October, is the 10th anniversary of the death of police employee Curtis Cheng, murdered on the streets of Sydney. The shooter was a 15-year-old boy. How did he come to be firing a pistol in downtown Parramatta on a quiet Friday afternoon? I'm Dan Mullins. This is Crime Insiders Judgment, a deep dive on a judge's final verdict of a crime and what transpired to incite that judgment. Curtis Cheng was a 58-year-old civilian employee of the New South Wales Police Force, serving as an assistant management accountant. He had been employed by the police for 18 years and was well regarded by his colleagues for his professionalism and dedication. Cheng was of Chinese-Australian descent and was a father of two. On the afternoon of October 2nd, 2015, he was fatally shot outside the New South Wales Police headquarters in Parramatta as he was leaving work. His murder was later determined to be a terrorist act. The perpetrator of the attack was 15-year-old Farhad Khalil Muhammad Jabbar, who was of Iranian Kurdish descent. On the day of the shooting, Jabbar approached the New South Wales Police headquarters carrying a Smith & Wesson .38 caliber revolver. He shot Curtis Cheng in the back of the head as Cheng was leaving the building. He died instantly. Jabbar then continued to fire into the police headquarters before being confronted and fatally shot by special constables who were stationed at the site. Following the murder, the AFP and New South Wales Police Force began a massive investigation. This swift response was crucial in identifying and apprehending individuals involved in the planning and execution of the attack. Jabbar, the 15-year-old perpetrator, was fatally shot by special constables immediately after the attack, so his actions and motivations were central to the investigation. Investigators found a note in his bloodied robes that said he had, quote, come to put terror in your hearts by carrying out religious-inspired violence for Islamic State. The letter said, you are all being watched 24/7 while you are asleep, awake, planning. Your nights will be turned into nightmares, your days into hell, by the will of Allah. 22-year-old Alou was identified as the individual who supplied the firearm used in the murder. He provided the revolver to Jabbar through another man, Talal Alamuddin, at the Parramatta Mosque on the morning of the attack. Alou's involvement was pivotal as he not only supplied the weapon, but also played a role in facilitating the attack. 22-year-old Alamuddin was arrested and charged with supplying the firearm used. He had a prior criminal history and displayed no remorse during proceedings. Then there was Milad Attai. He accompanied Rabban Alou to meetings where they attempted to procure the gun and create an Islamic State flag. Although Attai wasn't present at the murder site, he later admitted he would have attended if asked. And Mustafa Durrani, a 23-year-old man, was charged with conspiring to plan a terrorist attack. He was accused of acting as a lookout during the exchange of the firearm between Alou and Alamuddin. Durrani's role was to ensure that the transaction went undetected by authorities. The investigation revealed that these individuals were motivated by extremist ideologies and had planned the attack meticulously. Their actions underscored the importance of vigilance and coordination among law enforcement agencies in preventing acts of domestic terrorism. The legal proceedings following the Curtis Cheng murder was significant in demonstrating the application of Australian counter-terrorism laws and the judiciary's role in upholding justice. Rabban Alou was convicted of supplying the firearm. During sentencing, he made an Islamic State salute expressing support for the terrorist organisation. The court sentenced him to 44 years in prison. Justice Peter Johnson told the court, "The offender is to be sentenced for aiding, abetting, counselling or procuring the commission of the offence. It is not a universal principle that the culpability of an aider and abettor is less than that of the principal offender. The offender was a very active planner and participant in this offence. Although he is liable as an aider and abettor, the principal offender was but 15 years old, who could not have committed the terrorist act unless equipped by the offender and then further encouraged to do so. This is a case where the moral culpability of the aider and abettor is close to, if not at the same level, as the principal offender. Although the offence to which the offender has pleaded guilty may encompass a wide degree of activity, I am well satisfied that this offence occupies a very high level of objective gravity. The offender was involved in the planning of the act in an intensive way and obtained the firearm which he furnished to the planned juvenile killer, who then used it for that purpose. The offender's involvement in this offence is not remote or peripheral from the terrorist act itself. Rather, the offender's involvement placed him next to the killer himself, both temporally and in his acts which assisted the crime. Unless the offender had obtained the firearm and provided it to the shooter, this crime could not have been committed. Rayban Alou was one of 4 individuals who were ultimately convicted for their roles in the terrorist attack. There was also Milad Attai. Attai was found guilty of assisting and encouraging Jabbar to carry out the attack and for helping Jabbar's sister reach Islamic State in Syria. The court found that he was actively involved in planning the attack. Then there was Talal Al-Madin. Al-Madin pleaded guilty to supplying the revolver to Alou, which was then given to Jabbar. He also pleaded guilty to recklessly possessing a thing connected with a terrorist act and breaching a firearm prohibition order. He refused to stand for the judge during his sentencing, which the judge noted as a sign of his fundamentalist beliefs. Mustafa Durrani was found guilty of conspiring with Alou and Attai to prepare for a terrorist attack. His role included acting as a lookout, providing money for the handgun, and offering ideological support for his co-conspirators. He was the last of the offenders to be sentenced. It's worth pointing out that Rayban Alou's sentence, a maximum of 44 years in prison with a non-parole period of 33 years, was the first time anyone in Australia had been convicted and sentenced for this specific offence. Following his sentencing, he attempted to appeal the severity of the sentence. His appeal was dismissed by the New South Wales Court of Criminal Appeal on October 4, 2019. An application for special leave to appeal to the High Court of Australia was also dismissed in June 2020. His sentence stands as originally handed down. Then there was Milad Attai, who pleaded guilty to aiding and abetting Jabbar. On November 23, 2018, Attai was sentenced to 38 years in jail with a non-parole period of 28 years and 6 months. Justice Peter Johnson also sentenced Milad Attai. His sentencing comments focused on Attai's radicalisation and his cruelty toward the Cheng family. Justice Johnson noted that while Attai did not supply the murder weapon, he knew about the plans and had supported the effort to get a gun for Jabbar. The judge expressed dismay at Attai's behaviour, particularly the letters he wrote from prison, where he retracted an apology he had made to Mr. Cheng's widow, Selina Cheng. Attai reportedly referred to his earlier remorse as remorse bullshit. Justice Johnson said Attai's approach to the Cheng family was cruel and devoid of basic humanity. He also commented on Attai's lack of remorse, saying that Attai seems to have shut the door to the path of rehabilitation. Attai also helped Jabbar's sister fly to Syria to join Islamic State shortly before the murder, a significant contribution to why his sentence was so high. An appeal against the severity of his sentence was heard by the New South Wales Supreme Court of Appeal. The judgment on this appeal was reserved as of the 2nd of June 2020. When Talal Al-Madeen fronted court for sentencing in May 2018, he received a maximum of 17 years and 8 months, with a non-parole period of 13 years and 6 months. His sentence was later reduced on appeal to an aggregate sentence of 14 years imprisonment, with a non-parole period of 10 years and 6 months. Justice Peter Johnson also sentenced Al-Madeen, and his comments reflected the defendant's specific role in the crime and his fundamentalist beliefs. The judge praised the fortitude and dignity of the Cheng family who were present in court. He noted that Al-Madeen had at least some level of sympathy for the fanatical Islamic State organization, and that his refusal to stand for the judge confirmed the judge's concerns about the defendant's fundamentalist beliefs. Justice Johnson found that Al-Madeen knew the gun he supplied was to be used for an immediate terror act. He also stated that he was not persuaded the offender has good prospects for rehabilitation. In September 2020, the New South Wales Court of Criminal Appeal granted Al-Madeen leave to appeal against his sentence. In lieu of the original sentence, the court imposed the aggregate sentence of 14 years. This reduced his total sentence and his non-parole period. And finally, Mustafa Durrani. In August 2019, Durrani was sentenced to a maximum of 28 years in prison with a non-parole period of 21 years. In 2021, an appeal by Durrani led to his conviction being quashed and a retrial ordered. Mustafa Durrani was the last of the 4 to be sentenced, his case complicated by his later successful appeal. The court found that Durrani played a significant part in the conspiracy. He was described as a deeply radicalised supporter of Islamic State who was actively involved in the indoctrination of others. His role included acting as a lookout while the gun was being acquired and providing money for the purchase of the handgun. Durrani lodged an appeal against his conviction and sentence. In 2021, his conviction was quashed and a retrial was ordered. The court heard it was the Crown case that the applicant had more than an interest in radical Islam, jihad, and extremist material. The Crown put to the jury that the evidence established that the applicant, as of the 2nd of October 2015, actively held extremist views, was a supporter of ISIS, was in favour of violent jihad against non-believers, was a believer that Muslims who died during violent jihad attained martyrdom and entry into paradise, believed that Islam throughout the world was under attack, and there was a religious obligation to respond to that attack by means of violent jihad, justifying the killing of non-believers, and was an extremist Salafist. A Salafist is a Muslim who follows Salafism, a conservative reform movement within Sunni Islam. In April 2023, after a retrial, a jury again found Durrani guilty of conspiring to commit a terrorist act in relation to Curtis Cheng's murder. It was the 4th court proceeding over many years. Durrani was subsequently sentenced to 14 years in prison, eligible for parole in May 2026, and the full sentence scheduled to expire in November 2030. The sentencing remarks for all 4 men underscore the judge's view that the crime was a premeditated act of terrorism and that the offenders showed no remorse, making their rehabilitation prospects poor. The Curtis Cheng case highlights the complexities of prosecuting terrorism-related crimes and the determination of law enforcement and the justice system to hold those who facilitate such acts accountable. The sentences handed down to the co-conspirators sent a strong message about the seriousness of the crimes and the consequences of aiding and abetting terrorist acts in Australia. The case also brought renewed focus on the issue of radicalisation and the challenges it presents to society and security agencies. The murder of Curtis Cheng represented not only a tragic loss of life, but also a significant test of Australia's legal and societal frameworks in responding to domestic terrorism. The attack underscored the challenges posed by politically motivated violence, particularly when perpetrated by young individuals, influenced by extremist ideologies. There were significant legal implications. First, the case highlighted the scope and application of Australia's counter-terrorism laws. Fahid Khalil Muhammad Jabbar, only 15 years old, committed an act classified as terrorism, emphasising that domestic terrorist threats are not confined to adult perpetrators. This raised critical legal questions regarding the prosecution of minors involved in politically motivated violence. These convictions demonstrated the capacity of the legal system to hold individuals accountable for enabling terrorist acts, even when the principal perpetrator is deceased. The case also illustrated the operation of federal and state laws in terrorism cases. The prosecution relied on a combination of New South Wales criminal law and federal counter-terrorism statutes, reflecting the interjurisdictional nature of the investigation. It highlighted the importance of cooperative frameworks between the Australian Federal Police, state police forces, and other security agencies in gathering evidence, executing warrants, and securing convictions. Furthermore, the attack prompted scrutiny of the legislative mechanisms used to prevent youth radicalisation. While existing laws allowed for the prosecution of acts of terrorism, the case exposed gaps in preventive measures and early intervention strategies for minors vulnerable to extremist influence. Policymakers subsequently reviewed programs aimed at identifying at-risk youth, particularly in culturally diverse communities, to ensure that interventions could occur before individuals progressed to violent acts. Coming up, what the terrorist attack meant for Australia in a wider sense. The murder of Curtis Cheng had a significant impact on communities across New South Wales and Australia more broadly, particularly among law enforcement, multicultural populations, and the general public. Its cultural reverberations highlighted the social dimensions of terrorism and the importance of maintaining societal cohesion in the aftermath of violent acts. The murder had a major impact on law enforcement and public service communities. Curtis Cheng was employed as a civilian working alongside sworn officers in an operational capacity. His murder underscored the vulnerability of non-uniformed public servants who play critical roles in policing and public safety. Following the attack, there was a tangible increase in support services and mental health resources for police personnel and associated staff. Counselling services were made widely available, recognising that trauma extends beyond immediate witnesses to affect colleagues, families, and the broader professional community. This response illustrated a growing understanding of the need for institutional resilience and employee welfare programs in public service organisations facing targeted violence. The murder also had profound effects within multicultural communities, particularly those of Middle Eastern and Muslim heritage. The fact that the perpetrator was a Muslim youth raised the potential for community tensions, stigmatisation, and backlash. Law enforcement and community leaders actively engaged with religious and cultural organisations to prevent division and promote dialogue. Programs were initiated to support community cohesion, emphasising that extremist acts do not represent entire populations. Leaders within affected communities condemned the attack and cooperated with police investigations, demonstrating the importance of partnership between authorities and local populations in preventing radicalisation and maintaining social harmony. And there was also major media coverage and a changed public perception. National media coverage of the murder was extensive and intense, bringing public attention to issues of domestic terrorism, radicalisation, and security in urban spaces. The attack prompted widespread debate on youth engagement, online radicalisation, and the effectiveness of counter-terrorism measures. While media scrutiny heightened public awareness, authorities sought to balance reporting with sensitivity toward the victim's family and the broader community. This highlighted the role of responsible journalism in shaping societal understanding and mitigating fear or prejudice following terrorist acts. State and federal governments looked at education and preventive initiatives in a bid to reduce the risk of such an attack ever occurring again. In the aftermath, schools and youth programs incorporated discussions on extremism, online safety, and civic responsibility. These initiatives were aimed at reducing vulnerability to radicalisation, particularly among young people exposed to extremist narratives through social media or peer networks. Workshops and educational campaigns emphasised critical thinking, empathy, and cross-cultural understanding. By addressing root causes of radicalisation, these efforts sought to prevent future attacks and to strengthen societal resilience. The attack on Curtis Cheng also contributed to broader cultural reflection on the nature of domestic terrorism in Australia. It served as a reminder that terrorism is not limited to foreign actors or large-scale plots, but can manifest in targeted, localised acts with profound social consequences. Memorials and commemorative events honoured Cheng's life and service, reinforcing the societal value placed on public service, community safety, and solidarity in the face of violence. These acts of remembrance also encouraged ongoing public discourse on tolerance, civic responsibility, and the ethical obligations of a diverse society to protect its members from extremist threats. While the murder was a singular event, it touched multiple aspects of Australian society. It highlighted vulnerabilities, prompted systemic reforms, and catalysed ongoing efforts to build resilient, inclusive communities capable of responding to the evolving threat of domestic terrorism. Curtis Cheng's family attended the unveiling of a memorial in his name outside the Parramatta Police headquarters a year after his death. The headquarters are now named after him. His son Alpha Cheng has devoted himself towards fighting hate and building tolerance within communities. He was awarded a Churchill Fellowship in 2019 to study counter-terrorism policy in several countries and has since transitioned from a teaching career to working as a government advisor in Canberra. Alpha Cheng is committed to raising awareness of cohesion and understanding. He carries on his hard work in loving memory of his late father. The legacy of Curtis Cheng serves as a reminder of the importance of safeguarding our communities and upholding the values of justice and security. Thanks for listening to Crime Insiders Judgements. We love hearing your feedback, so please rate and review this episode. If you have a case you want us to cover, let us know via Instagram at Listener Crime or TikTok at Listener Crime Team. I'll be back again next Thursday with another case. I'm Dan Mullins, with sound design by Niall Fernandez. This series was recorded and produced on Gadigal land.